So what we did is we uploaded that form. That form has certain properties, such as, its form ID, the name and description, what's about that form, what category it's going to be found in, and then importantly to the workflow is the signatures. And on that form, we define who has the ability to sign that form. So that's here where it says signature authority. Where on that form that signature is going to land. So what field that form is going to receive that signature. The next important part of it is that we're collecting this data. So we went into this form and we clicked the single button to generate a new table in the client database for this form. So every time this process occurs, it's going to write to that database table. That gives the ability to pull that information out in a variety of ways we're going to talk about. So what we did here is we clicked one button. So you're in this form properties and you click on the data storage field for the first time and you haven't mapped any data to it, you have the option of either mapping that data to an existing data table or create a new data table in the FormFast client database table for that data. And what that does is it generates a table in the FormFast client and it maps each form field to a new column. So it creates a column name and a form field name. So this is kind of where it's important that you pay attention to how your form is designed, because you can see here we've got a lot of things called field text 6, field text 7, field text 8. Looking at a database, you don't really have the metadata that tells you what that is. And another way to look at what you're going to get is to I went to the wrong spot in my slides here. Another way to see what you're going to get is to look at the form itself. So in Form Designer, you can see the naming and change the naming of the fields. If you can see this one right up here, it's an ABC button. What I'm going to do is just display that being clicked. So up here, this ABC button. When you click, that's going to display the names of the fields. You can edit those in line right there. So if you want to change these things that say fill text, because a lot of times there is no label automatically. A lot of times, like on this form, these labels were automatically propagated from the scan, but in some cases there's no information for it to pull from, so it just calls it fill text. So you go in and you can quickly change the names of these fields right in line here. It's going to help you when you go in to create your database table. It's going to help you down the road. I'll show you how we want to pull this information out. It's going to help you to get that information out and make a lot more sense. Something that we did last month was create the workflow for this form. So there are parts. There's the workflow and there's the form itself. We just talked about the form, and now we'll talk about creating the workflow. That is under the admin screen, the workflows. I searched for purchase and it pulled up the purchase request. I click edit, and then bring up the wizard that shows us what this workflow looks like. So just in review, what we did is we created the route, which looks something like this over here on the right. It has a couple of conditional steps. So based on the total amount of this purchase, it will either go to the vice president or it will not. And based on a requesting department, it's going to either go to contract coordinator or it will not. The other thing we did in the workflow itself is to find when those signatures are going to be requested. So on the form, we say who has the authority to approve this, and in the workflow, we say what step is that going to be requested for signature. So those are a couple of the important things that we did in the workflow. And then more to what we're talking about today is in the workflow, we define the final disposition. And final dispositions mean what are we going to do when the work is completed? Where do we put this? So we have several options, and what we did for this one is write to database. So that's going to send each piece of information on that form, each piece of data, to that database that we mapped, that we talked about earlier today, just the mapping. So it's going to fill that database table out each time this workflow is routed through. Things that we can do is send out a text file with all of the data elements posted into a text file, save that off. We can send that text file to our output management system to trigger other events. We can send out the PDF in our version of a PDF, so all that data is encapsulated and can't be changed in the PDF itself, so you can have that for records or to share with others. We can send that off to an imaging system. We can do a few different things with that, but the most common use case is to write that to database so that you can get to that data later and use it in new ways. That brings us to what we're going to talk about today, is getting the data out of the system. We're going to assume that it's been a month since we did our setup. We've deployed this and we've got some workflows happening. Again, we're just looking at where that data lives. So we know that it resides in the FormFast client database because of this connection information here in the table called Form 41. And then if I want to access any of these fields, I would just access them by name. And where do you find those names? Two places, in the data mapping or in the form designer. And this is an administrative set of functionalities that we're going to talk about. So as an administrator, you would be able to click on the management button on the left-hand side. And what we're going to talk about is usage reports and custom reports in those areas. Then we'll talk about the scheduled tasks, because the nice thing about this is once I create my report, I can create a scheduled task to send that report to different users, so I can distribute that report. So let me open up the software here. Running a virtual machine with my software on it. I'm going to log in as myself with administrative credentials. And what we wanted to show you, we were in management. One type of information that we're collecting, of course, is just simply usage. That can be what forms are being processed, what workflows are being done with the system at a high level. So we're talking about the data on the form. So an example of a usage report, and I'll pull up my form usage by category. So this looks at all categories of forms that I have available and to show me which ones are being used the most. The form that I was showing you, the one that we set up, was in my workflows demos category, and I can restrict this by a date range if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just see what I get here. It shows me that out of my workflow demo category, the most used form is that purchase request form, followed by the coding query and physician orders. So that's one example, is understanding the usage of your system. Now we can talk about how we can get this report out of the system. One of the ways we can do is we can just save it right here in different ways. And again, it's just the usage report. We'll talk about the custom reports that will show the data that you're collecting. But these are different options and formats that our reporting tool gives you to report saved locally. And then we'll talk too about giving others permissions to view this report and giving others, this report, pushing it to them through a scheduled task. So let's just at another one here, the coding query. This will be the usage in the coding query category to show me maybe, in this case, we would see that this procedure in the coding query category is leading to a lot of questions. So this is probably where we would want to put some improved training or documentation. That's a use case for why we would use a report like this. Let me me go back to management again, and I'll show you a real quick example. That was under the usage reports. Another example is the custom reports. So last month we created an application of purchase requests where we're identifying a vendor that we want to purchase the total amount of dollars in product from. So a report that I might want to do on that would be maybe something like a purchase request activities, a purchasing activities report based on the data that I'm collecting in that form itself. So this is the result of that, and let me break it down here in just a second. But you can see that from data that we've collected on that form, we have a vendor name and a total. So I can pull that up real quickly. I go in and I manage that report. Behind the scenes, if you were to go to custom reports and click the edit report, this is the same screen that you'd be seeing. So we're just looking at me editing what I added. So I took what I knew. I knew that we were in Form 41, database table, and I wanted to look at the vendor name and a total. So I selected the vendor name and total from Form 41. And then I saved that. That's the result right there. Now you can get more interesting with that select statement, your level of knowledge, or just learning from online sources, or asking our support. We also offer some services around building out more robust reporting. So that's the capability that is there. And it goes beyond that. You can see when I did other reports, like the query, I can look at data ranges and things like that. So in my custom report, I can also add things like date ranges. I can add totaling of, for Acme Distributing, I can total that up in that select statement. So how do I get this information to the next step? Okay, so we created a report, but now what? We still need to give that to the business users who need that report. So one thing to do is add permissions. Permissions gives other users the ability to see this specific report. As I go through this, I can say I want to give, let's see, I want to take a department. I want to say the accounting department should have access to this particular report. So I move that department into the members of permitted users for that report. And what happens when I do that? Let me go back to my slides so you can see an example. What happens when I do give others permission to see that? This is a user, Mike Kelly, has some management permissions assigned to him. So because there's a permission assigned out of the management side of it, he gets a management button. When he clicks on that, what he manages to see these reports. So he's able to access a certain subset of the reports that we have available. This particular user has permissions to see some of the usage reports and some of the custom reports. So that ability there. Just a side note, FormFast is designed fast flow so that the administration can be delegated across departments and users and groups. So aside from just the reporting permissions, you could give other users, say a super user in a department, the ability to create their own forms and create their own workflows. And it was similar to this. They would receive some management capabilities under the administrative side when they logged in, once you do that. So, and we can save this off in a variety of formats. We can save it and view it on screen. We can save it as a PDF right here, or Excel, so get this data out. And that's nice when we're looking at, some of the reports that have graphs on those, that you can take that and distribute that as a PDF, or you can take that and distribute that or copy that into a spreadsheet, and also create an HTML document. However you want to get this this report out. The step was to look at how we do this as a scheduled task. I go back to my management screen and I click on the scheduled tasks, and I'm going to click add a scheduled task. The name is purchasing activity. Type of task is it? It's not a file copy, so we'll drop down here. We're going to say run report. So you can see in our scheduled tasks we have a lot of or activities that can be scheduled. I click the run report. That's going to bring up some variables based on the type of report that I'm going to run. Of course, it to be active or inactive, so you can use on and off as needed. So you could create that, but maybe you don't want to start it quite yet. There's an active button there. And do you want this to run? Let's say we want this to run every Sunday, or you can put a frequency in minutes. When do we want it to start? When do we want it to end? When do you want it to run next? So you want it to run it right away. You can go in here manually and make it run. What report are we going to run? We create a custom report, and the custom report is purchasing activity. And who do we want to send that to? We want that to maybe accounts payable. That would be a person, or we can pick a group or a role or department. And so then what happens is that's going to send the report to that user's FastFlow inbox. And if that user in their user profile, so user settings, if they are receiving messages inbox, if they have it set to send them an email when it arrives in their inbox, then that report will also be emailed to them. It's a really powerful tool. They get a report in their email on frequency that you set, on the process that you create around their needs, bring them data that you would have probably otherwise without this system a hard time getting to and getting them that report. So it's very quick and easy to get some of these reports out to your users or to your executive teams who need those. Also, delegating or distributing access to those reports so they can get those on demand. They can search date ranges that they are interested in, and so that they can use data to make better decisions. And so that's what I wanted to cover today. That was a quick overview of reporting, and I hope this gives you some good ideas of where you can go with the technology, how you can take what you're currently using and maybe make it better, collecting and distributing that data, maybe working with the reporting and pulling that data out in new ways, and of course that data to your team who is responsible for the processes and who can use that data to make better decisions. So I'm going to open it up now for questions on what we've covered today or even the last month's webinar as well.
Okay, that brings me right back to my next segment. Again, that was a good presentation, Sean. Again, if you guys have not done so already, go ahead and enter your questions in the channel or the Q&A section on the right-hand side. And while you do that, I'll go ahead and take a quick second to talk about the upcoming events. On November 14th, FormFast is hosting a special webinar panel discussion, and it's going to be discussing the healthcare policy of the newly elected administration and the effect that the decision will have on healthcare. Now, this panel will feature HIMSS Analytics VP of Market Research, Lauren Pettit, Art and Healthcare futurist Jeff Bauer, the Editor-in-Chief of Healthcare Technology Online, Ken Condon, and FormFast Solution Architect and author Scott Fuller. Now, you'll definitely want to be a part of this important panel discussion. Now, the link will be provided at the end of this webinar. And also, our next user group, which on December 7th of next month, will appropriately titled Troubleshooting 101, in which we're featuring the most common troubleshooting tips and solutions of all our products. So to come with any questions you may have, because we'll have one of our solution consultants available to answer those for you, and you won't want to miss this webinar as well. see if we have any questions. Like we don't have any questions now. Sean, do you have any final thoughts or anything you wanted to mention?
Again, I just hope that this kind of gives you some ideas of where you can go with the product, some things that you can do. We're here to help you as you start brainstorming about the application ideas. We'd like to hear what you're doing, like to hear what you'd like to do, and help you achieve that. So hopefully these webinars are helping to turn on a few light bulbs of ideas for you. I thank everybody for their time. I know that everybody's busy, and we want to keep this out and brief. So if anybody has questions, we'll stay on. But again, thank you for your time.
And thank you all for joining us today. And just FYI, the recording link of this webinar is going to be sent out to everyone that registered. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions or any comments or anything for me, please contact myself, the host at pblanks@formfast.com. And again, if there's an application or anything you saw demonstrated and you'd like to get more information on that, please contact myself, or what you can do is set up a personal demonstration or meeting with you or your team on the following page. So thank you again, everyone, and we'll go ahead and end the session today, and we'll see you all next month.